They said it was a moment of pure magic, a beautiful, impossible paradox that binds two souls into one. But the truth is, it was the start of the end. A quiet, insidious end that began not with a bang, but with a flicker on a screen. It was just my partner, Donna, and me, wrapped up in our own little bubble of naive bliss. Our life was a series of check boxes we'd happily ticked off. Meet, fall in love, get married, and now finally, start a family. We had a Pinterest board overflowing with nursery ideas, a list of baby names scribbled on a napkin, and a future so bright it felt like a physical warmth in the room. This baby wasn't just a part of our future, it was the whole thing. It was our legacy, our joy, the culmination of everything we had ever wanted. We were so busy building this perfect picture that we never noticed the cracks forming beneath our feet. The ultrasound clinic was a sterile, unsettling place, a stark contrast to the warmth of our imagined world. Donna squeezed my hand, her knuckles white, her excitement a tangible thing. She was a bundle of nerves and radiant hope, a mixture of the two that had me completely captivated. She kept asking if our baby would have my eyes or her smile, her voice a mix of anticipation and a familiar anxiety that always lived just beneath the surface. I tried to calm her, my own heart a drum solo in my chest, a mix of pure excitement and a profound, terrifying vulnerability. I just kept reminding her that everything would be perfect, that soon we would see our little one for the first time. The technician, a woman with tired eyes and a practiced, emotionless face, spread the cold gel across Donna's belly. The room fell silent except for the whir of the machine. I watched the screen, my breath held tight, searching for some flicker of life, some sign that this was real. The black and white shapes appeared, a swirling, incomprehensible landscape. The technician's face remained a mask, but her movements, they were different. She paused, the wand hovering over a single, unidentifiable shape. She tilted her head, then moved it again, her brow furrowed in a way that wasn't just concentration. It was something else. A flicker of doubt, concern. She didn't say a word, just kept searching, her eyes fixed on the screen, a tension building in her shoulders. The silence stretched, and then she finally pointed at the screen. Not to the shape, but to a number. A number that didn't make any sense. Not to me, not to Donna. A number that was impossibly, terrifyingly wrong. The silence was a weight, pressing down on us as the technician continued to move the wand, her face a mask of professional neutrality that didn't quite hide the concern in her eyes. The screen was a grainy landscape of grays and blacks, and somewhere in the middle of it all, a shape flickered, a tiny, pulsating beat that was our baby's heart. But my eyes were fixed on the corner of the screen where the numbers were. The due date didn't match ours. Our baby was a week and a half ahead of schedule, something the technician initially dismissed as a common variation, but the tension in her hands told a different story. Donna's knuckles were white as she squeezed my hand, a silent question in her eyes. I could see the panic starting to cloud her face, mirroring the confusion in my own head. My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation. Maybe we had miscalculated. Maybe her cycle was off. Maybe this was just a weird quirk of fate. I clung to every possible reason, every flimsy excuse, anything to avoid the truth that was starting to creep into the edges of my vision. The technician excused herself, her voice a little too calm, her smile a little too tight as she went to consult with a doctor. The moment she left, the dam broke. What was that? What does that mean? Donna's voice was a whisper, thick with fear. I didn't have an answer. All I had was a growing sense of unease, a cold feeling spreading through my stomach. The room felt suddenly too small, the air too thick. I stared at the grainy image on the screen, at the tiny, flickering shape that was supposed to be our baby, our perfect future. But it wasn't perfect. Something was wrong. When the doctor came in, his face was grave. He spoke in hushed tones, using medical jargon I didn't understand, but the message was clear. The measurements are inconsistent with the dates we have on file, he said, his eyes avoiding ours. He asked about our last menstrual cycle again, our conception dates, as if we were the ones who had made a mistake. We answered, our voices small and hollow, but he just shook his head, his brow furrowed. He said they needed to run more tests, to get a better look. But his words were a flimsy veil, barely hiding the truth. This wasn't a simple miscalculation. This wasn't a common variation. This was a mystery, and it was tied to the single, chilling detail that was now burned into my mind. The name on the file. It wasn't our name. It was someone else's. Panic was a slow poison, and it began to seep into our lives. We left the clinic in a daze, our perfect bubble popped by a single, inexplicable error. The ride home was silent, the air thick with unspoken fear. The first thing I did was call my mother. She was the one who always had a logical explanation, a calming word. I told her about the strange due date and the name on the file. Her voice, usually so strong, trembled. "A mistake, darling. The hospital must have mixed up the files." But even she didn't sound convinced. My father, who rarely showed emotion, just told me to be careful, to trust my gut. His advice was a cold stone in my stomach. My partner, Donna, was a whirlwind of frantic texts and phone calls to friends and family. Everyone offered comforting platitudes, but their messages felt hollow. "It's all going to be fine. Just a simple mix-up. Don't worry." But the more they tried to reassure us, the more the knot in my stomach tightened. I started looking back, replaying every moment from the last few months. The way Donna's sister had acted so distant at the baby shower. The strange, secretive phone calls Donna had taken. The late-night trips to the pharmacy for snacks that she always insisted on making alone. They were all just innocent moments at the time, but now they were tiny red flags waving in the wind. My mind kept going back to a photograph I had taken a few weeks ago. It was a picture of a random receipt that had fallen out of Donna's purse, and I had taken it to tease her about her impulse purchases. But now it wasn't so funny. I pulled up the photo on my phone. The receipt was from a different hospital, a clinic in a different city, one Donna had no reason to go to. I zoomed in, my heart pounding in my chest. There it was at the bottom of the receipt, a scribbled note, an appointment for an ultrasound. A few weeks before our own. My hands started to shake. I looked at the date on the receipt, and a chilling realization washed over me. The date on the receipt was the exact same day that our baby's measurements said it was due. A terrible truth, a truth that was impossible to accept, began to form in my mind. The baby Donna was carrying was not our baby. The photograph of the receipt was a cold shock to the system. It wasn't just a misprint, it was evidence, a quiet, damning truth hidden in plain sight. I spent the next day in a fog, replaying everything. The strange due date, the name on the file, the distant phone calls, it all clicked into place, a grim puzzle finally solved. My mind, usually a safe place of quiet hopes and dreams, was now a battlefield of suspicion. I knew I couldn't confront Donna. Not yet. I had to know for sure. I went back to the clinic, my heart hammering against my ribs. I made up some excuse about needing a copy of the ultrasound images, and while the receptionist was distracted, I casually asked about the other clinic. Her face, which had been a mask of pleasant disinterest, went still. She confirmed they sometimes referred patients there, but her eyes held a spark of recognition, a flicker of something she was trying to hide. It was a small victory, but it was enough. I asked for the name of the clinic's administrator and waited until she was gone for lunch. I found her office, and, using a little more charm than I felt comfortable with, I got her to talk. She remembered Donna and the initial appointment. She remembered the mix-up. And she remembered the panicked look on Donna's face when she realized her medical records had been mistakenly swapped with another patient's. The other patient's name was Anna. The same name on the receipt. The truth was a heavy weight in my chest. I couldn't deny it anymore. My perfect world had been a lie, built on a foundation of secrets I was just beginning to uncover. I remembered Donna's odd behavior months ago. The late-night phone calls from an old friend she would only take in the other room. The sudden trip she took to see her sister, a trip that was supposed to be a surprise, but now felt more like an escape. She had been building a secret life, and I had been blind to every single sign. The more I looked, the more the memories changed, the light shifting to reveal their true, sinister nature. I drove home, my mind a storm of questions. Who was Anna? Why were her medical records in the file? What was Donna hiding? When I got to the front door, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Donna's sister. The message was simple and short, but it broke the dam of my suspicion. It was a photo of an old text message chain between her and Donna. The conversation was about me, about the lie, about how long Donna could keep up the charade. And then there was the final, devastating sentence, a line that had me reeling. He's going to find out eventually. You can't keep him from the truth forever. It was from her sister. And it was a confession. The text message from Donna's sister was a dagger. It was the final piece of the puzzle, a confession I never wanted to hear. My hands trembled as I read the words again and again, the betrayal a bitter taste in my mouth. I went inside, my mind a storm of questions and emotions. Donna was in the kitchen, humming softly, a picture of domestic bliss that now felt like a cruel joke. I couldn't look at her without seeing a stranger, a woman who had built our future on a foundation of lies. I forced the words out, my voice a low, dangerous whisper. Who is Anna? She froze, her humming stopping abruptly. The color drained from her face, and her smile faltered. She tried to play it off, to pretend she didn't know what I was talking about, but the look in her eyes was one of pure, unadulterated fear. What are you talking about? She said, her voice thin and shaky. I held up my phone, the text message from her sister a glaring accusation. Don't lie to me, Donna. I know about the other clinic. I know about the other due date. I know about Anna. The words hung in the air between us, a chasm of unspoken truths. Tears welled in her eyes, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of a cornered animal, of a woman whose carefully constructed lie was crumbling around her. She confessed to meeting someone, to a one-night stand, to a moment of weakness that had spiraled into this elaborate deception. She thought it was a secret she could bury, a mistake she could erase, but it had grown into a life, into a baby she was carrying. And then, she said the words that shattered everything. He doesn't know. The father, he doesn't know. The air went out of the room. It wasn't a confession. It was a plea, a desperate attempt to protect her lie. But it was too late. My phone buzzed again, this time with a text message from an unknown number. The message was just a link, a URL with no context. I clicked on it, my heart pounding with a terrible premonition. The link led to a public social media profile. The profile of a man, a face I didn't recognize, but whose eyes held a chilling resemblance to the ultrasound image. My eyes went to his biography. It was a simple line, looking for my baby. My son. Our last name is Jones. It was the name on the medical file. The truth was no longer just a suspicion. It was a living, breathing reality, a stranger who was looking for his child, a child I thought was mine. And he was getting closer. The link on my phone was a punch to the gut. The man's face stared back at me, a face I had never seen before, and yet I knew him. He was the ghost that had haunted our ultrasound, the shadow in the corner of every conversation. His name was Jones, and he was looking for his child, a child I had been told was mine. I looked up from my phone, my eyes locking with Donna's. Her tears had stopped. Her face was now a mask of cold resolve. The woman I thought I knew was gone, replaced by a stranger. The air in the kitchen grew thick with a silence that screamed louder than any shout. The hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the clock on the wall. Every sound was a violation. Who is he? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She flinched, but she didn't look away. His name is Mark, she said, her voice hollow. We were together a long time ago. Before you. He moved away. We reconnected and... She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. The rest of the story wasn't necessary. I already knew. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a mix-up. It was a calculated, deliberate act of betrayal. She had been pregnant with his child, had seen the opportunity to pass it off as mine, and had taken it. The ultrasound mix-up wasn't a fluke. It was a desperate attempt to cover her tracks, to hide a secret that was growing inside her. A secret that wasn't ours. The world tilted on its axis. Our future, the nursery we had planned, the names we had chosen, it was all a lie. A cruel, elaborate lie built on my love and my trust. The pain was a physical thing, a crushing weight on my chest, a fire in my veins. I looked at her, truly looked at her, and the future I had imagined with her, the one with our child, dissolved into a cloud of ash. There was no going back. The woman standing in front of me was not the woman I had fallen in love with. She was a deceiver, a thief who had stolen my joy and replaced it with a lie. My mind, usually so clear and logical, was a whirlwind of rage and heartbreak. My first instinct was to lash out, to scream, to shatter the perfect kitchen she had created, but a deeper, colder part of me took over. I would not give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. I would not let her win. I turned, my heart a block of ice in my chest, and walked away. I walked out of the house, out of her life, out of the lie. The door closed behind me with a quiet click, a final sound that sealed my fate. The silence that followed was the sound of a life ending, a life I would have to rebuild from the ashes. I drove until the city lights were just a faint glow in the rearview mirror, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. The world outside the car was a blur, but the image of Donna's cold, calculating face was burned into my mind. I was a man with no home, no partner, and no future. The silence in the car was a physical presence, a heavy blanket that smothered my every thought. The tears finally came, hot and stinging, a release of all the rage and heartbreak I had been holding in. I had lost everything, not in a fire or a robbery, but in a lie. A lie I had believed with my whole heart. I found myself at a friend's house, a safe harbor in the storm. I told him everything, the words tumbling out in a torrent of pain and disbelief. He just listened, his silence a comfort, his presence an anchor. He helped me call a lawyer, a man who spoke in legal terms I didn't understand, but whose words were a lifeline. We talked about a DNA test, about legal action, about the paternity of a child I had loved before it was even born. The perfect life I had so carefully constructed was gone, replaced by a maze of legal battles and emotional turmoil. I had to face the fact that this wasn't just a betrayal, it was a crime. She had stolen a part of my life, a part of my future, and I had to fight to get it back. I started to understand that my love for Donna wasn't a flaw. My trust wasn't a weakness. It was her deception that was the problem, her lie that had shattered everything. I looked at the world differently now. The little things that once brought me joy, the warmth of the sun on my skin, the sound of a good song on the radio, they all felt a little hollow. I knew it would take time to heal, to rebuild, to trust again. But I also knew I wouldn't let her win. I wouldn't let her lie define me. I would find a way to move on, to build a new life, a new future. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. But what happens when that picture is a lie? What happens when a single, flickering image on a screen changes everything you thought you knew? I learned that a beautiful, impossible paradox can become a quiet, insidious end. This story is a warning, a tale of what can happen when the truth is hidden in plain sight. We think we know the people we love, but sometimes the biggest lies are the ones we tell ourselves. Have you ever had a gut feeling that something was wrong, only to find out you were right? Tell me your story in the comments below. And if you want to hear more stories like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.